He didn't insult a policy, he insulted the dead. With a single sentence on American television, Donald Trump reopened one of the most sensitive wounds in modern Western military history, suggesting that European troops stayed a little off the front lines in Afghanistan. And this time, the response didn't come from a commentator or an opposition figure. It came from a British Prime Minister speaking with visible restraint and unmistakable anger. Because when you erase sacrifice, you don't just rewrite history, you fracture alliances. Here's what actually happened. Speaking to Fox News, Donald Trump claimed that NATO allies were not truly present on the front lines during the war in Afghanistan. It wasn't a slip of the tongue. It fit a pattern, a long-running narrative that paints the United States as the lone pillar of Western security, carrying ungrateful allies on its back. But this time, London pushed back, publicly. Keir Starmer, the British Prime Minister, called the remarks insulting and frankly appalling. Then he did something rare in modern transatlantic politics. He implied the American president owed an apology, not for politics, for honor. Starmer reminded the world of a number Trump's comment conveniently erased: 457 British service members killed in Afghanistan. Not advisors, not observers, soldiers, Marines, medics, dead. This wasn't rhetorical outrage, it was a line being drawn, because Afghanistan was not an American-only war. It was NATO's first and only invocation of Article 5, collective defense, after September 11th. Britain fought shoulder to shoulder with U.S. forces for 2 decades. So did Canadians, Germans, Danes, French, Poles, Australians, and others. They bled together. They buried their dead together. And now, years later, the President of the United States is casually suggesting those sacrifices barely counted. That's why this matters. Alliances are not held together by contracts alone. They are held together by memory, trust, and shared sacrifice. When the leader of the most powerful country in that alliance publicly diminishes the contributions of others, he is not just insulting them, he is weakening the foundation that alliance stands on. Trump's defenders rushed to reframe the issue. The White House responded by doubling down, saying the U.S. has done more for NATO than all other countries combined. That may be true in raw spending. It is not true in blood, and blood is the currency of credibility in military alliances. This dispute didn't happen in isolation. It came just days after Trump withdrew a threat to impose tariffs on European countries that opposed his demand that the United States take over Greenland, a semi-autonomous territory of Denmark. It came as Trump, speaking at the World Economic Forum in Davos, openly questioned whether NATO would defend the U.S. if asked. "We've never needed them," he said. "We've never really asked anything of them." That statement alone should have set off alarms across every European capital, because it reveals the system-level problem underneath the soundbites. Trump views alliances as transactional protection rackets. Pay up or you're freeloaders. Agree with U.S. demands or face punishment. Loyalty is measured in GDP percentages, not shared history. European leaders, particularly in Britain, view alliances as strategic partnerships built on mutual obligation. Different philosophy, different worldview, and now a growing rupture. When Starmer hinted that Trump should apologize, he wasn't just defending Britain's past. He was defending the idea that alliance membership means something more than a balance sheet. At the institutional level, this is dangerous. NATO deterrence relies on belief that if one member is attacked, others will respond. That belief is psychological before it is military. Every public doubt cast by a U.S. president chips away at that credibility. If European publics begin to believe that the United States does not respect their sacrifices, their willingness to support U.S.-led missions collapses. If European leaders begin to believe that American guarantees are conditional on political obedience, they will hedge. That means more independent European defense planning, more strategic autonomy, more distance from Washington, and that shift is already underway. Now look at the human side again. For British families who lost sons and daughters in Helmand Province, this wasn't a debate, it was a reopening of grief. For veterans who fought alongside Americans, it felt like erasure. as if years of patrols, ambushes, and funerals had been reduced to a footnote. That emotional cost matters. Democracies cannot sustain foreign deployments without public consent, and public consent is built on the belief that sacrifice is recognized, not dismissed. Globally, America's rivals are watching closely. Moscow sees division, Beijing sees opportunity. Every crack in NATO unity becomes leverage. Every public insult between allies becomes propaganda for those who argue the West is fractured and unreliable. This is how influence drains away, not in one dramatic collapse, but through accumulated disrespect. So where does this go? If Trump continues framing alliances as burdens rather than force multipliers, Europe will accelerate its pivot towards self-reliance, not out of spite, out of necessity. Britain, Germany, and France will invest more in autonomous defense structures. NATO will still exist, but its cohesion will be thinner, more conditional. And once that happens, rebuilding trust becomes exponentially harder. The warning here is simple. You can renegotiate burden sharing without rewriting history. You can demand more spending without insulting the dead. Once you cross that line, you are no longer strengthening alliances, you are hollowing them out. Keir Starmer didn't ask for confrontation. He asked for acknowledgement, for a basic truth that allies fought, bled, and died together. Ignore that truth, and the alliance becomes just a logo. If you want more analysis that cuts through the noise, like the video, share your thoughts in the comments and subscribe, because alliances survive on memory, and democracies survive when reality is defended, even against the most powerful voices in the room.